Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, May 2nd. May 2nd. Think about that for a second. 2023. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. Joined by Steve Helwagen, as Steve Wiltfong tends to drift during the non-recruiting months, but that's okay. We've got plenty to talk about. The new roster, the transfer portal closing up, the draft, basketball offers everywhere. Steve, it's gray outside, so it must be May in Ohio.
Yeah, hopefully, as I said before we started, this is the last day of winter. It's only going to get up to about 43 here in Columbus today. I was supposed to play golf with my dad, who's 80 years old.
Cold for those bones.
Yes, cold. Yes, he says if it's below about 55, he ain't going out. So, obviously we called this off 3 days ago, so we moved it to Friday. But hopefully this will be the end of that. And we're ready. It is the beginning of May, so we've made it through 4 months of this year. And OSU last played on or about the 1st or December 31st of last year. And there'll be 4 more full months, May, June, July, August, until they'll play again beginning of September. So we are halfway through the offseason, Dan. We made it halfway. How about that?
And it might even be warm in August. I don't even know anymore. I know it will be, but I can't convince my brain. My memories of my childhood, May was warm. I'm just telling you, it's like I don't know what's going on. But let's talk about let's kind of bring things front and center here. The most recent transfer portal has closed. So this is pretty much your roster, ladies and gentlemen. What you see at Ohio State now, for the most part, I don't think there's ever going to be a time in college football under the current climate, I put that in air quotes, where your roster is going to be completely set. But for now, it does appear that Ohio State has things settled. This past weekend, the big domino to fall was the acquisition or the addition of Josh Simmons, what looks to be right tackle from San Diego State. Very nice pickup for Justin Fry there, calling back on his California roots developed out in his time with UCLA and Chip Kelly. How do you see the roster now? Do you see any other major holes? Where do you see the major battles now for starting positions, given we think we have who we'll have when Indiana comes calling or we go going there? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's at Indiana. I think that the roster is pretty well set, at least of guys who are going to play in 2023. I think Simmons comes in and will be potentially like the Rutgers transfer they had a few years ago on the offensive line, a guy that can come in and compete right away for a starting job, either at right tackle or left tackle, redshirted, and then played 1 season at San Diego State. So he's got 3 years of eligibility left. And at worst, what I thought, he's got the ability, I think, to play guard or tackle at the Big Ten level. So if it doesn't work out for him at tackle, don't rule out the fact that he could start, perhaps next season at guard, because you're going to lose probably both of your guards, Donovan Jackson and Matthew Jones. So my guess is that's probably the fallback position that they use to say, okay, if you don't play, you could very well be our number 1 offensive lineman off the bench, either at guard or tackle, and still get to play quite a bit. As we've seen, they play a 6th guy quite a bit, even in some jumbo packages. So to me, I think that was very impressive that they were able to fill that need. I don't see another glaring need on this team right now. They're bringing in Lorenzo Styles, which I think is going to be difficult for him to learn a new position and compete for playing time right away. It just seems, I know he's a great athlete, and we'll see how it all works out, but they've got 3 pretty good corners right now with Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosun, and Jordan Hancock and Jair Brown as well. So he's going to be swimming upstream just to get into the 2 deep. So that'll be interesting. I know that Chris Hummer reported that from 24/7 reported that Jalen Key is a safety transfer that may come in for a visit here. He's from Alabama, Birmingham. So we'll see how that goes. I didn't really think that safety was that big of a need, although you play 3 of them. Maybe you do need some depth there. You're counting on guys like Court Williams and some other guys coming back to be in the 2 deep. So we'll see, how that all shakes out. And if he does ultimately decide to pick Ohio State. But yeah, I think as of right now, we have him 2 scholarships over. If you're counting Styles as a scholarship player, which I would think you would. I don't know why, what the lure is for him to come to Ohio State and pay his own way, other than the fact he's a resident and it'll cost a little bit less than for him to be an out-of-state.
Not as cheap as you think, by the way. I got a high school senior.
Yeah, it's not as cheap as you think. Definitely. I've got a daughter at Miami and 2 recent Ohio State graduates, and the college loan debt to show for it. So, yeah, any rate, it's going to be I think this is the team that's moving forward, and I can't find a lot of weaknesses on this team. I think, we were talking off air about the top 25 that the 24/7 put out. Ohio State sitting at number 3, a playoff team, and I think fully deserving of that.
And we will definitely get to that in a little bit, because there's some stuff in there that
doesn't make sense.
Far be it from 24/7 to generate page views with a headline, but we're not guilty of that at all here. I will say this about, I really credit Ohio State for their transfer portal approach. This is what I was hoping, how they would go about it. If you look at some of the other programs, let's just compare them to Alabama. Alabama tends to go after guys who have flamed out at another program. For example, they've gone to Georgia. I'm not saying Jamison Williams flamed out here, but he wasn't going to start over Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. If you look at the guys that Ohio State has added, the main transfers, they're going after guys who have multiple years of eligibility left and come from just one level down a program, meaning you got Ole Miss, Syracuse, San Diego State. Those teams are going to essentially serve as the minor league for Ohio State now, and they can go in and handpick starters like Davison Igbinosun and Josh Simmons were cornerstone pieces of those programs. It wasn't like they're going into a guy who was super highly recruited at, let's say, Notre Dame, for example. And I put Lorenzo in quotes there. So I really like their approach. I think it's going to work out beautifully for them going forward. And I also think those guys coming into the roster, maybe without the super fanfare, I think maybe eases the transition. Super high-profile transfers can hurt a locker room if you're not a quarterback, because guys get tweaked out a little bit. It's hard enough to make the team here as a regular player, as we see wide receivers transfer out now that they see younger guys who are pushing them out. So I'm very happy with their approach so far, because I do think there was some question at the beginning on how they'd approach the portal relative to the NIL and stuff like that. So they've done a real nice job. And we can credit that. Let's address these 2 things. One, a lot of questions on the scholarship crunch, and maybe you can address that. But first, Taiwan Malone, Mika Hanna, one of my guys, asked. He visited this past weekend. We talked about this on Monday's show with Dave. He is still considering 2 other schools. He's going to visit Miami. He's also considering going back to Ole Miss. Keep in mind, Taiwan's a little bit different because he's a baseball player. That's going to affect his transfer status in some way. We will do some research on that, because the window should be closed for him. But he is considering Miami and Ohio State and Miami and Mississippi still. But the baseball factor for Miami could eventually, and the NIL for that matter, could eventually be the determining factor there. But could you bring us up to speed on the portal and on the scholarship crunch? I know there's literally, I cannot remember a day in this time at Bucknuts for the last 12, 13 years where we haven't been like, oh my God, they're going to get under the number. And somehow they always get under the number.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy this past weekend. Caleb Brown was one of the entrants into the transfer portal. And excuse me, wide receiver, second-year guy, I think a sophomore, played enough last year that he would be a sophomore. And he's in the portal now, and he had a really good spring, in my opinion. And he and Brian Hartline, Brian Hartline was pushing him to the moon, it seemed like. But the opportunity to play in the slot just doesn't seem like right now it's going to be there. So, I look at it that
he's a guy that could go start somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He could go start somewhere at a Power 5 school, and he's not going to start here.
No, that's at least not this year. So, yeah, I think that was a surprise. There's still 2 spots over, and people are like, well, the transfer portal window is closed. But honestly, if guys are graduate transfers, they can leave and have immediate eligibility at any time. So I think what you're going to see is a couple of guys get their degree from Ohio State when the semester ends up, and then quietly enter the portal as graduate transfers and have immediate eligibility somewhere else if they want to continue to play. So I think that will be the plan, to get this under 80 or to get it down to 85, and for those guys to be able to play elsewhere if they want. Or some people are in for some really rude awakenings, I think, coming up, and will have to serve a year of residence somewhere else if they want to continue to play. So one or the other, but it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
I think they call those come to Jesus meetings, but they never really in those meetings say you have to leave. And I think they've been surprised that a few guys have said, no, I'll stick it out. It's changed now. You can listen, being an Ohio State football, I always tell this story about being an Ohio State football player. It's a pretty good life. Okay. My friend once sent me a picture of J.K. Dobbins walking across center campus on a sunny day in a tank top. And the caption was, do you think he struggles socially? No.
Probably not.
So listen, to say, a responsible, mature 21-year-old can look around and be like, this is way better than going to play for, Rapid City. So I think they're going to have an issue with that going forward. I'm not even kidding. Once you get in the closed doors of Ohio State, I went to the foundation. It's good to be a Buckeye, people, okay? It's a good life. So they may have trouble with those come to Jesus meetings, and guys may be I don't know what they're going to do at that point, but they'll get to 85. That's kind of the point. They always do. Let's actually take a quick break here at the 12-minute mark, and then we're going to go over the 24/7 spring rankings after the draft and after transfer portal closes. You get draft grades. Somehow people grade the draft one day after, though no one's played a game yet, which to me is the most. I read it all, I mind you, but it's the worst content you'll ever read for accuracy. Let's go over the 24/7 top 10. I'll go 10 to 1, and then you can comment where you see fit. Number 10, Clemson. Number 9, Texas. Number 8, Penn State. Number 7, USC. Number 6, the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Wow, let's just pause there for a second. First of all, Texas. It's become a running joke. You can't lose 5 games until you lose that 4th game. It's like they just find a way every year to end up at 500, and it's like, and get into a bowl game. 7-6, they end up whatever every year. It's not just this year, last year, the year before. It's like every year people put them in the top 10. And by the end of the year, you look up and, they've lost 5 games again. It's just, it's like death and taxes, and they think it's going to get any better going to the SEC. It's going to get worse. They're going to be 5-7 going to the SEC because they just don't have it. Maybe they've recruited a few people, and maybe Quinn Ewers is going to have a good year. I see him. I'm doing a draft notebook right now, and he's mentioned in some first round mocks for next year's draft. So whatever, you want to burn a pick on that guy, that's fine. So any rate, Texas caught my eye there. Clemson clear down at number 10. Are they the highest ranked ACC team at number 10? It seems like they would be. That, boy, oh boy, that's out of whack. The mighty have fallen there. And I think that's some NIL situations on a college in a small town. It's, national championship program, et cetera, but I just don't know if they got that NIL juice. So
they're number 10, not with a bullet. They're heading the wrong way. If you look at their recent trend, I mean, Clemson a few years ago they were where Georgia is. You know what I'm saying? In terms of maybe not quite as strong, but they were mentioned with Ohio State and Alabama every year, and they're headed in the wrong way.
You didn't mention Notre Dame, and they're number 11, and lose to Marshall last year, and then have a great comeback, after that to finish the year. But
I like the quarterback, man. Sam Hartman is a stud. That makes me nervous. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Penn State 8.
He's not Tyler Buckner.
Yeah. Yeah. USC, Penn State, they seem to be good, but Alabama at 6. I mean, has Alabama been number 6 other than that one year they got relegated to the Capital One Bowl or whatever it is, the Citrus Bowl in Orlando? Mm-hmm. They had one bad year. They're usually in the top 4 or 5 every year. I guess quarterback's the issue there. They're still they took Buckner, so we'll see if he ends up being their starter. But I'll press play. You could continue from there, but Alabama at 6 is jarring. That just jars the senses to see that. That's crazy.
The only argument for that would be they brought in Tyler Buckner after the spring game when their two incumbents struggled, and they're replacing both coordinators, which Alabama tends to be a rite of passage, but still, that's a hard trick to Tommy Rees is not Bill O'Brien now. Come on.
No.
So, and we move on. Number 5, we want to talk about another team that gets, I don't believe this till I see it, Florida State. Sammy Smith and Charlie Ward are not walking through that door. Okay. No. It's not 1988. No. I got to see that one to believe it, man.
No.
Number 4, LSU. I guess I will say I think Brian Kelly's a pretty good coach, and I think their quarterback's coming back, which is helpful. And LSU's always loaded with talent. But number 3, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Number 2, Michigan. Number 1, Georgia. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree on Florida State. Same as Texas. Put them in the
exactly.
You're going to have to show me first. You can fool me and sneak into the top 5, and I'll be just fine with that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to put you there.
I got to see it.
Yeah, I got to see that first. Let's see who was 4 here. LSU, man, they had a really nice year last year. They did get whacked around a little bit in one of their losses, as I recall. Upset Alabama, to which surprised everybody. Kelly, hard guy to root for. Got to tell you that.
Boy, he is a grating dude, man.
Yeah,
and I think he's a good coach.
I was out on him years ago. Cincinnati had just won a game at Pittsburgh to go 12-0, and the debate was, can you put him in the championship game or whatever? And he's like, well, we're waiting on a process here that's going to come down in the next few days, about the Notre Dame job. And I'm just like, dude, that was not the time and the place to be talking about some process at a school far, far away. So your team's 12-0, God, good Lord, I don't get that, but not a coach where your feet are type guy. Let's just
he wakes up cranky. That guy, what I mean? He wakes up cranky.
Yeah, Michigan ahead of Ohio State is obviously they beat them 2 years in a row, and the game this year is at Michigan, and Michigan has its quarterback and outstanding running back Blake Corum. I think they will be 11-0, and I think Ohio State will probably be 11-0. I mean, could Penn State knock off one of them? I mean, Michigan has to play at Penn State, so it's entirely possible Michigan could lose at Penn State. But even that, if they come home and beat Ohio State and, forge this 3-way tie at 11-1, man, who goes to the championship game? We're already, trying to conjure that idea in our mind. But, we'll get to that in the days and months ahead, trying to split between those two, it's hard to say. And then Georgia at number one, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Stetson Bennett's not there anymore. They've lost so many top draft picks off that team, but still Georgia number one. We'll see what kind of offense they put together. I mean, they lost a lot of firepower off that team.
I tell you what, I would like to see now Georgia, the reason they are where they are, the state of Georgia is producing talent at a rate almost never seen before for its size. If you go look at it, I mean, it's not just the Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields of the world. Every couple of years, it's out of control. And I've said this, if you look at the all-county team in Gwinnett County, it looks like the McDonald's All-American team. Ohio State benefited from getting defensive player of the year in Caden McDonald, but it's like Julian Sand and, Josh Downs, Caleb Downs, and Justice Haynes, all in one county.
Yeah.
County.
Mike Bobo is back there as the offensive coordinator and for Todd Monken. And,
Mike, loaded.
Georgia guy, had a chance to be a head coach and it didn't work out. So if it means, more to him than probably anybody there. So I take that as a good sign for Georgia that he's got that job and, potentially the head coach in waiting, I would think.
Georgia, however, has, I guess, Jake Fromm, but they've really never won it with a super high-profile quarterback. So I'm hoping that's their bugaboo because they do have to replace Stetson Bennett. And while he wasn't large in stature, he does leave a pretty big hole in the program there, given what he produced. So
no doubt. Let's
see what they can do at quarterback. That's one spot I think everyone should be. I don't know about more than the benefit of the doubt at Ohio State, that the ability to produce quarterbacks consistently makes them a solid betting source going forward.
No doubt.
Georgia has not shown they can do that yet. Now, I'm not saying they can't, but Stetson Bennett was not, what was he, a fifth-round draft pick and a little bit of a reach at that, maybe the fourth round.
Yeah.
So we shall see. All right. We're going to touch on some basketball here. Sonny Johnson is not – Sonny Johnson's the dad, right? And then
yes.
Sonny Johnson
and the brother. The younger Sonny Johnson is at Detroit.
Okay,
as
Marcus Johnson, who was just offered, who is the cousin of Michi Johnson.
Yes.
He's worked that all out for us and bring us up to speed with the most recent offer.
Yes. Michi Johnson was the star a couple of years ago out of Garfield Heights. And then, of course, he went to a prep school for a year. And then Ohio State convinced him to graduate. He had gone back to Garfield Heights for his senior year, but never got to play. Mm-hmm. But he was coming off a knee injury, and Ohio State, because they were thin in the guard positions, they had an injury there with one of those transfer guards prior to the season. Michi was committed the following year. He would have been a freshman this past year, and they convinced him to come in a year early, or actually 2 years ago. They convinced him to come in a year early. So he spent 2 years at Ohio State, transferred out, went to South Carolina, never really got into a flow at Ohio State. Just seemed like a fish out of water. It seemed at times at Ohio State. And a lot of that was coming back off that knee injury where he'd had like 18 months of inactivity. So now here comes his cousin, Marcus, who averaged 20 points a game as a freshman at Garfield Heights, was his league's player of the year and All-Ohio first team Division I pick. He has lit it up the last 2 weekends on the Nike 15-year-old circuit and playing really well in those games, hitting about 45% of his threes. And Ohio State with Chris Holtmann, Jake Diebler out on the road watching him play, they came back to Columbus and put their heads together and said, we got to offer this kid. So last night about 6 o'clock, Sonny Johnson, the dad, who's also the coach at Garfield Heights, put out the tweet that his son had gotten the offer. And let me just tell you, there is no discontent, at least with that faction of the Johnson family, with Ohio State. So they are very much enamored with the idea that Marcus would play his college basketball at Ohio State. And he told me, we have an interview on the site, that Michi really didn't have anything bad to say about Ohio State, at least to him. So that's what he told me publicly. So I take that at face value. Alabama, LSU, Cincinnati, Georgia Tech and some others have offered him, and many, many others are going to offer him. West Virginia, Huggy Bear was in on him early. So, this is a kid to keep an eye on. And I'll be going out to Fort Wayne this weekend for the Hensley Run and Slam there in Fort Wayne, and his team, Indy Heat, will be the host team in the 15 bracket, and I'll hopefully get a chance to see him play this weekend. So him and a lot of other top prospects in action this weekend.
Yeah. The Bill Hensley Run and Slam at Spiece Fieldhouse in Fort Wayne. It's basically the Midwest pseudo championship because it's an off weekend for the shoe circuits, and it's one of the few tournaments that attracts the top shoe circuit teams.
Yep.
So if you go to Spiece this weekend, first of all, get there early and be ready to park in a satellite lot. Secondly, it will be about the best prep basketball you can see in the Midwest all summer. And it's cool because now there's a tour for every shoe. Friggin' New Balance has a tour. So Adidas, New Balance, Nike,
Under Armour,
Joseph A. Banks, and Johnson and Murphy tour. They'll all be there.
Heads.
Yeah, and also to comment, we commented on 3 Johnsons here. There is no question that Marcus is the leader of the pack when it comes to a prospect.
He's ranked number 16 in the country by ESPN. Michi was never ranked. Michi was in the top 50 before he got hurt, and then after the injury, just never – he was probably like 120 when OSU took him. So, and honestly, that's the level he played at for the first year and a half, and just really struggled. He had a really good year this past year at South Carolina.
He needs the ball.
Getting healthy. That's good
to see. He needs the ball, too. I mean, if you ever watch Michi play in high school, he would throw up 50 in a game. The assist total would not be 50. So let's just put it that way. This obviously brings up the final question. What does this mean about Bronny? Nothing exactly, but we're just using it as a segue.
It is so hard to get a read. What I heard was a week ago that Diebler and Holtman had another phone, Zoom call with LeBron and Bronny, and at that time, the door was still open, and they have a scholarship available because Tanner Holden has left, and if Bryce Sensabaugh doesn't come back, which I don't feel like he will, there is a scholarship available. They'll either fill it with Bronny James or potentially a grad transfer. There may have been a Penn State guard, Mahaffey, who may have made a visit or was contemplating a visit, could be in the works, maybe as the backup plan if Bronny doesn't take it. So God only knows when Bronny's going to decide. By all rights, there's no deadline he has to sign by. He could just show up on June 10th and enroll for the summer semester and start workouts and be a Buckeye. So I would think within the next 5 weeks we'll know because they want him in here and he would want to come in, I would think, for summer semester to start intensive workouts for his freshman year with his future college team, or stay in California and show up in August. Hell if I know. But at any rate, the news that's there is very sparse. Let's just say that.
I think the best answer you gave there was hell if I know. That's what
hell if I know.
And if you knew, 5 minutes from now it could change.
And Braun being in the playoffs, another series probably pushes this out, because that's their focus right now is that series, and that's what they're worried about. So
as for Bryce Sensabaugh, I was at the foundation gathering last week, and Chris Holtman used him as one of their players in the NBA in terms of their alumni. So that's a fair, and he looked up and nodded. By the way, Bryce Sensabaugh, I saw in person. Man, that dude ain't 6'5". He's about 6'4". He better be able to shoot, man, because he's a guard in the NBA. He's gonna have to play some point, believe it or not. That's how I'm serious. He's not as big as you think, man. Yeah. Go look at the NBA. Jeez.
He's a little clunky, a little herky-jerky, but doggone if he can get the job done every now and then.
Now. He's got a man scoring game, but he defensively, he's going to learn he's going to hear what the term ISO means, scream from across the court a lot. Yeah. Let's see. Do we have anything else? I think we're good. Oh, Mahaffey, I believe that possible transfer is a Moeller kid.
Yeah.
And Penn State's in upheaval, obviously, with the changeover and the loss of Brian Snow.
Yes. Our guy, our man in Amsterdam.
I think that's going to do it for Steve and I. We appreciate him stopping by and filling in for Steve Wiltfong. Had to dip into the salary cap again, but have a good one, Bucknutters.